Afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday and it is 4 p.m. ET, and you have found us here at Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze. I am Hank Phillippi Ryan, your host, the author of 13 novels of suspense. The newest one, Her Perfect Life, was just nominated for the Agatha for Best Novel of the Year, so casually displayed behind me here. So thank you so much for that. And wow, thank you for coming this afternoon. We had the absolute joy of welcoming the fabulous Gilly Macmillan, whose book, The Long Weekend, is just out in the United States and it is all the buzz. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I see everybody coming here, Shannon and Sherry and Catherine and Brenda, coming to hear the fabulous Gilly Macmillan. Let me just read you, B.A. Paris, and we love B.A. Paris, said about The Long Weekend. Beautifully written and wonderfully atmospheric, The Long Weekend is an unputdownable roller coaster of a read, and B.A. Paris knows her stuff. Gilly, what did you think when you saw what B.A. Paris, what Bernadette had said?
Oh, it was an absolute incredible moment. Like when you get something like that from an author you admire, you just, you can't beat that feeling. It was wonderful. I think she's such a terrific writer. So yeah, big, wonderful moment for me.
And it's also strange when someone who you really admire reads your book and you have this thought of, oh, here's B.A. Paris reading my book.
Yes,
Does
all the
that ever
time.
go away? I mean, you're so successful and such a huge bestseller. Does that ever go away, the trepidation of someone reading your novel?
No, never. No, I don't think I'd want it to, Hank, because I think it's good to kind of keep on your toes. And, I'm always afraid that I haven't written as good a book as before, or, as classic writer's nerves. So I am still terrified every time any other author reads a book. And I think I should be.
Well, I think we all should be. I mean, I think that what you call writer's nerves is sort of our need to make sure that we're writing the best book that we can, bigger and better and more compelling and more clever and more surprising. And that challenge is a little scary.
I think it is scary. And I think it's how you push yourself is remaining scared, a little bit. I mean, I would dearly love to write without fear. But I think if I did, I'm not sure whether the books would be good enough because I might lose sight of the fact that I'm really writing for readers and, will what I write keep them turning pages? These are questions I ask myself all the time, sort of nervy questions, but I think it's necessary to do that.
And that certainly comes through not the fear, but the keeping us turning pages in The Long Weekend, which is unputdownable, as B.A. Paris said. I don't know where that word came from. It seems sort of newish, but it certainly does describe your book. Let me just quickly welcome you all again to Crime Time. I see the people are pouring in and the comments are pouring in. Here's Liz and Catherine and Sherry. So marvelous. To come here to Crime Time to hear Gilly Macmillan. If you are new to Crime Time, what a great day you have picked to come join us. Crime Time, part of A Mighty Blaze. A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic by the super powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us together and keep our book community discovering new books and talking to new authors like Gilly Macmillan, which wouldn't have happened otherwise. So that's quite amazing. And again, as sadly usual, let me take 2 seconds to send our love to the people and support of the people of Ukraine who are going through an insane and terrible, horrifying time. Our hearts go out to them, and we hope this is successfully over soon. No one's lives will ever be the same. And it does make us count our blessings a little bit that when we hear a strange noise outside, that it's probably not something wrong and that we can read whatever book we want. And the next one should be The Long Weekend by Gilly Macmillan, just out in the US, out a couple of months ago in the UK. So you've had two launches, Gilly.
I have. I had a launch in February in the UK, but it was quite muted because we were just coming out of a long lockdown at the time. So it was quite a quiet launch. So it's been an absolute joy to have another North American launch and be able to take part in loads of online events and just celebrate the book coming out across the pond, as we say. Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely. I've had a really nice week.
And I know you're in Bristol in the UK, and it must be amazing to be able to really connect with people internationally in a way. I mean, if you're looking at the silver lining, to connect with people internationally in a way that you certainly wouldn't have been able to in other
It's a yeah,
circumstances.
I agree. It's a huge silver lining for me. I mean, I've connected with all sorts of fabulous authors and interviewers over the last week, and that feels incredibly special, especially after a few years of feeling I certainly felt pretty isolated. I'm imagining quite a few people did too. So the book community, the international book community is absolutely fantastic in that respect. I feel very much a sense of belonging, which is a real privilege.
And when I look over, speaking of belonging to the community, when I look over here, I'm not looking away from you all. I'm looking at all of the comments that are coming in. Here's Gail saying hi, and Catherine saying, love A Mighty Blaze. We do indeed. And all kinds of wonderful applause for your books, Gilly. Let me tell you all, if you don't know Gilly Macmillan, I'll read you her quick bio just so you get an idea of what royalty we have here today. Gilly Macmillan is the New York Times bestselling and Edgar Award nominated author of 7 novels. Her work has been translated into 25 languages and appeared on the bestseller list in the US, Canada, Germany, and the UK. She lives in Bristol, England with her family. Her newest novel, as I said, The Long Weekend, is just out in the US to absolute rave reviews. Oh, there you have the real one. I have the
I
advanced
do, yes.
copy.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of having a copy of it, you can have a copy of it too. Gilly is generously giving away a copy of her novel by way of A Mighty Blaze. And you can win that by leaving a comment. I'm pointing to the comments here. By leaving a comment in the comments. Where else would you leave the comments? Or just general applause or just general accolades. Thank you, Catherine. You are now entered. Who says it's amazing to have virtual interviews? These are great. You are now entered to win a copy of The Long Weekend, as Bozena is also entered as well. So yay, keep them coming. And at the end of the show, we'll have the wheel of fun spinning that will choose the winner for you. So you were talking about, Gilly, isolation and writing this book in isolation. And The Long Weekend is certainly has some big element of isolation. I don't want to give away too much about the book, so you tell us as much as you want to tell, just to get our listeners into your novel.
So The Long Weekend is about 3 women who leave their homes in the south of England and drive up north to the borders with Scotland, which is one of the very few kind of wilderness places we have here in the UK, to spend a weekend. The idea is that their husbands will join them the next day, but before that, they're going to have a girls' night. So they get dropped off in this very remote place to stay in a place called Dark Fell Barn. And they're pretty pleased. I mean, they're not all the same. They have, slightly conflicting feelings about the weekend, but they jump out of the Land Rover and they go into the barn, and they see on the kitchen table a gift, a bottle of champagne, and leaning up against it is an envelope. And they're really pleased. They think maybe one of their husbands did something thoughtful and left something nice for them. So one of them opens the envelope and she finds a letter addressed to all 3 of them. And I'm going to read it. I have it here. And the letter says, "Hi, ladies. Your weekend starts here. I hope you have a great time. I didn't come along because I know I'm not welcome. This is goodbye. I'm going away, but I wouldn't want you to forget me. By the time you read this, I'll have killed one of your husbands." And it's signed E. And of course, that's where the action in the book kicks off. And they think it's a joke, but then as the evening rolls on and they realize that they have no cell reception, no Wi-Fi, no way of contacting the outside world, they start to get a little worried. And each one of them individually has a reason to be afraid for her husband. And that's how the book starts.
And I mean, you see the people, you'll have to come back to the comments after we're finished with this interview and look, and people are saying, ooh, what a line. Oh my goodness. And someone is saying, Gail, I think was saying, what a line, was saying, I'm not going to go on a girls' weekend after hearing that.
No.
I mean, one of the things that's so gorgeous about this letter and so chilling is how you reveal each of the women's reaction to the letter, whether it's rationalizing, whether it's wishing, whether it's keeping a secret. How did you figure that out?
I really wanted to have three very different women. So we have Jane, who's ex-army. We have Ruth, who's a GP, a doctor, but she also likes to drink a little too much. And then we have young Emily. And Emily is a great deal younger than the other women. And the man she married is a great deal older. She's also new to this group. It's quite a tight-knit group of couples, but Emily is new in. And so I really wanted to explore kind of the different marriages and not just be inside the marriages, but look at how we all view one another's marriages. So people make assumptions about Emily. She's a gold digger. And the book kind of asks, well, is she or isn't she? And it asks questions of the other marriages too. And I think that's part of what happens when the women start to worry about whether this letter could be a real threat, and if so, whose husband might be affected. We start to get this little look inside what's going on within their marriages.
It's interesting because you so cleverly use point of view to allow the reader to get inside the head of each one, and then also see how the other women view the woman that we know about. If that sentence makes any sense, because it's all about facades and secrets and how you present yourself and your marriage, not only to the world but to yourself, what you believe about your spouse.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting thing, like all the things that the little lies we are able to tell ourselves in life, kind of sometimes feed into marriage, I think. Maybe some people go into marriage and there's a little red flag and they think, well, it's just one little red flag, I'm going to ignore that. And maybe they build up and maybe they don't. And I think that's a really important point about how we kind of construct marriage within as well as without. It's a really fascinating thing.
The
And
study
obviously like rich for thrillers, the kind of secrets within domestic lives and this idea of, is everything what it seems to be?
Sure. I mean, that is the key of a good thriller, isn't it? That everything isn't what it seems to be. And we as readers know that going in, and we're sort of looking to see where the holes in the stories are and who has what secrets. Secrets, everybody has a secret, and some of them they're keeping from themselves, some of them they're keeping from their spouses, many of them they're keeping from their friends. I just saw Shannon say, I'd be out of there right away. I'd be the first one to leave. But you've set up, and that's a perfect segue into this question, you've set up this situation where they can't really do that.
No, it's dangerous for them to leave. They the barn they're staying is not accessible by regular vehicles. You have to be driven up there in a four-wheel drive. They get dropped off there by the farmer who owns it. And then, as often happens in books like this, the weather comes in and they're not prepared. So leaving the property is a risk. And it's a risk they're strongly tempted to take. And if you read the book, you'll see what happens there.
I mean, because anyone would say, if someone is threatening my husband, I know it's probably a joke, as the women try to tell themselves, probably a joke, but I just want to hear his voice. I just want to hear his voice. And some of them, I won't even describe this, go out to try to make that happen.
Yes, one of the women in particular is very, very keen. So she will take that risk of going out into the wilderness. They have very different responses. Jane is quite measured. She's used to assessing risk. She does it. She also has a very strong reason to want to stay in the barn, which she's kept a secret from the others. But Ruth is a bit of a mess. She misses her baby, but she's not really sure. She doesn't feel strong. Ruth feels weak, even though looks successful from the outside. But young Emily, she really, really wants to talk to Paul.
And it's so heartbreaking how ill prepared they are for this. No matter that it's Dark Fell Farm, which you just don't want to go there. Anybody who's read a book wouldn't want to go there. But they're ill prepared for this, because they're city girls. They're city girls.
Yes.
Where did the idea for this book come from?
So the idea for this book came from a movie, which I watched when I was chatting about ideas with my agent, and it's a 1949 movie, written and directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz, and it's called A Letter to Three Wives. And it's actually, oh, there we go, some comment, a pilot movie. Yeah, absolutely, you're bang on it, inspired the book. And it's a romantic drama, and three wives go on a boat trip for a day. And as they're leaving, somebody gives them a letter. When it's too late to get off the boat, it's already departing. They read it, and it says, "By the time you read this, I will have run off with one of your husbands." So I thought that was just brilliant. And I thought, wouldn't it be a brilliant thriller plot to make that a whole lot darker, and bring it into the modern day and recast it with modern characters? And I highly recommend the film. If anybody likes a really great film with really snappy dialogue and plotting and insight into marriages and all of that, I highly recommend you watch it.
We're talking about The Long Weekend by Gilly Macmillan, not based on, but inspired by, maybe the domino that fell was the movie The Letter to Three Wives. You said it was written by Joseph L. Mankiewicz, and I was looking into that because I was just swooning over what a good idea that was, and saw that it was also written by Vera Caspary, who
Oh,
wrote
yeah.
Laura. So you can see that atmosphere.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
in the
It's
book.
so well written. It was just, it's brilliant.
Oh, I know, I remember it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Julie. That book that took place in 1949 was a completely different. Isolation was more possible in 1949 than it is now. How did you did such a good job of making it logical that the women couldn't communicate. Talk about what processes you went through to make the isolation be so seamlessly realistic.
I think, first of all, I thought about setting it on an island. I mean, that was an obvious thing to do, but I felt that there'd been quite a few thrillers where that had happened lately. So I kind of nixed that pretty quickly. And then I thought, I've got to find somewhere remote, which is not that easy here. We don't have a great deal of wilderness. But the place that suggested itself was northeast England, just on the borders with Scotland. And it's very, very wild up there. It really is. It's like one of the few places in this country where you get proper dark nights.
Oh.
And so I thought, well, it has to be there. It really does. And so I went up to kind of explore it, and it's wildly beautiful and wildly wild. And it just seemed absolutely perfect. And then I thought, well, I'm going to have to make the track inaccessible to irregular cars. They want to go on the women want to go dark for the weekend, so they know there's no cell reception, they know there's no Wi-Fi, and they're okay, or they think they're okay with that when they're on the way, because obviously they don't anticipate such a horrible thing happening.
But they're isolated by choice. But you, as an author, had to peel back all the possibilities. I mean, your readers are smart, and they're going to think, why didn't they just X, Y, and Z? So you had to anticipate all the things that readers might ask about why didn't they do that? Why didn't the husbands, contact them? Why didn't they call the farmer? And it all really works. Did you plot that out as you went through?
I did work very hard on that, because I thought it's just going to ruin the book if the reader thinks, well, I would have just done this, or why didn't they do that? And that's made even more difficult because there are three of them. So there's three smart women with three sets of ideas about what they should do. So I really had to interrogate the situation, interrogate what I would do, what others might do, to try and make sure that I'd kind of made all their actions rational, but also not, left a great big howler of a plot hole where they could have just wandered down the lane easily and the whole book would be finished.
I just love that. I thought it worked so seamlessly. I was always trying, it's terrible. I always try to figure out what's going to happen in a novel. And in this, you surprised me around every turn. And people do things that are logical and do things that are logical and, even more importantly, logical for them.
Yeah.
Did you know what was going to happen as the book progressed?
I did not. No, I'm not a good plotter. I'm a very poor plotter. So I tend to have the situation and I have the characters, and then I know broadly who I want to come out okay at the end and who I don't really mind if they meet a stickier end. And so I set off from there. And I do write quite messy first drafts. I often have quite substantial edits to do when I write a second draft because I feel like I don't discover the book until I've finished the first draft.
No, I understand that. Is there a moment, I mean, because you realize after you're finished and you're just sort of plowing through, just keep writing, just see what happens. And there's always a moment, knock on wood, where your writer brain says, here's what this is about. Here's what this book is. Do you have that?
I do. Sometimes it takes a really long time to show up sometimes, and that's when it's scary. um, yeah, so I do. And sometimes that really isn't till the very end of the first draft when I don't like to read my own work, but obviously you have to read your first drafts. And there is a gorgeous feeling of relief when you see that's the book. That's where the emphasis needs to be. That's the real story here. And then you work hard to pull that out in a second draft.
Because it's about obsession and friendship and love and marriage and fidelity and secrets, all of that in this gorgeous book we're talking about. If you just joined us, The Long Weekend by Gilly Macmillan, which we are giving away a copy of. If you be entered, you will leave a comment for Gilly or just a general applause or accolade for that. But I do think that one of the things that the book talks about is the relationship that the husbands had before they met their wives, and that plays a pivotal role in this book as well. Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. That's a key part of the book. So the women's husbands were at school together, and they were also at school with a woman called Edie and her husband Rob, and they were a very, very tight knit group. And we find out during the book why they were so tight knit. And Edie is a really pivotal character. She's not with the women on this weekend. She's been left out, and she's been left out because she's not always easy to be around. The husbands really love her. They're very tight with her, and the wives don't like that very much. So this kind of member of their group who's not there is the thing that really, it's like the sand in the sandal, it's the thing that's really giving them pause and making them wonder, is this letter real? Yeah, so there are secrets there, secrets in the past.
And the husband's relationship with Edie colors all of the wives' theories about where they might be and what they might be doing and what they really thought and whether they were the second choice, that kind of thing. And I do want to make it clear, and I think it's interesting that so many of us have read locked room mysteries, the mansion, the farmhouse where it's closed, but this isn't that. The Long Weekend, it isn't that kind of a novel. Tell about, and Brenda saying the plot thickens. Yes, indeed, very thick and lovely. The whole book is not at Darkfell Farm.
It's not, and it looks a little bit like a locked room mystery book, but it really isn't. So it's just where they are when the action kicks off, and there's another storyline going on. And also halfway through the book, we start to find out which of the husbands is safe and which might not be. And the action all transfers back to their hometown. So yeah, it looks like a locked room mystery, but in fact, it's a kind of take on that. It's not really one. It's not like your sort of traditional Agatha Christie or anything like that. It's a bit different.
It feels like it, and you've made it so contemporary because it's really a locked relationship mystery, and the reader is putting together the puzzle pieces of what these people's relationship really is, and you're so great at that.
Thanks, Hank. I mean, I do love to read a book where the reader sometimes has a bit more knowledge than the characters. I think that's a fun thing. And when you do multiple perspectives, you can do that. You can see, somebody thinks one thing, somebody thinks another, somebody knows something somebody else does. And playing with all that is a very fun thing to do as a writer. And you hope it just increases the tension for the reader.
Well, it does. You're the queen of pronouns. You know, that is, sometimes I would think, is it this person or is it that person? Oh, no, I think it's this person. No, I have to keep reading to find out whether it's that person. Was there a moment when, I mean, did you know their relationships? Did you see the whole puzzle of their relationships, all of them, from the beginning, or did you put it together yourself, just the relationship part?
I put it together as I was writing. And yeah, so writing and rewriting and trying to kind of refine them so that everybody made sense and everybody had equal attention and all the different relationships within this group had equal attention. So that was kind of a challenge actually, but also fun. It was a real tear your hair out at the beginning, but then I settled into who everybody was and how they related to each other.
Expand on that a little bit. What do you mean it was a tear your hair out? I mean, the juggle of keeping all the plates spinning?
I think that's exactly right. And when you have a complex plot and you have quite a few characters, I always feel like I'm pulling a ton of threads through the novel,
Mhm.
and you need to kind of have the right tension on each of them. Else it doesn't really work. You can't let one go slack and have one be too tight. You want to coax all of those characters through and all of those relationships through while keeping things nice and clear for the reader. So I'm always thinking about that. And that's where that is the bit where I tear my hair about thinking, have I done it? Um, but I enjoy that. I really enjoy it because I'm a reader first. I'm a reader before I'm a writer. So I'm always thinking about the
Sure.
reader experience.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about pulling the laces a little bit tighter. Can I
Yeah.
make those relationships be and that and you just you do it so perfectly. Um, but I've written a note to myself that I can't write down. Oh, I know I can't read it my own handwriting. But what I was saying is, I finally read it. Is although the story is complex, it is not complicated. It is not difficult to read. It is not difficult to understand. It is not difficult to keep track of the characters. And that is so brilliantly done because that's difficult. That's difficult.
Yeah, that is a challenge. And that's a very hard thing to do because when you're close to the book, you get a bit snowblind. You can't, it's very hard to come at it as a first reader. And that's
Mhm.
where the editors and the copy editors are so valuable, because you can just hand it over and go, please tell me if this works. This makes sense.
With the knowledge, as you've written these books so along the way, there is this realization that when you turn it in, you can fix it. That sometimes when someone finds a problem, A, that's a great thing because they found the problem,
Yeah,
and B, the solution to the problem will make the book even better than just the solution, if you know what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah. When I very first started writing, I had a really terrific bit of advice from a friend of mine who's a film director. And she said, you're going to get notes. You're going to get a lot of notes. And she said, even if you don't agree with what they are suggesting as a fix for a problem in the book, look at what the problem is. Look at why they told you to fix something. And that's where you start. And you may find a different solution, that you're happy with, but there's probably a problem there because it made them give you a note. And that was just such brilliant advice. And I've taken that with me all through my career.
It's really reassuring to know that we don't have to be defensive. We just be open and think someone else may have a good idea. Some experienced person has noticed something. And as one of my former editors used to say, please address. And she would not say how to fix it. She would just say, the reader will not understand X, Y, and Z. Please
Yeah,
address. And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was lovely to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I have an editor who writes a lot of questions. And that's also nice because she's not saying this isn't working, you've done this badly. She's saying, will readers, be able to get this, or is this clear enough? And I love that. It's a very gentle style of editing. It's sort of inquisitive, and it gets your brain going, oh, okay, I need to think about that, instead of locking up into a sort of
Exactly.
editorial rage.
Right. You sort of seize up and say, I'm doing it my way and I don't care
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
But however it worked for the long weekend, Gilly, it absolutely worked. When you saw the finished product, when all the gears clicked together and the puzzle pieces clicked together, did your editor just say, this is just the best thing you've ever done?
They were pleased with this book. Yeah, they were pleased because it's a fast book for me, and it's a fun book, and it's got a good twist. And I hadn't kind of pulled all that together yet in my career, I don't think so. So I had a good reaction to it, which was really, really nice, especially as it was a pandemic book for me.
Right. And to talk about writing a book about isolation in isolation, do you think that affected you?
I think, strangely for me, I was far less isolated day to day in the pandemic because my husband and my kids all came home. So, although I was isolated from the wider
Oh,
world, my kind of minute to minute experience became quite busy, and and that was very different. I'd been used to working in an empty house before and having it to myself. So, it was a strange combination of things. It was challenging for sure, kind of
I,
making it right.
suddenly everyone wants lunch, right? And you're
Right.
like, I don't
Yeah.
have time for that.
Yeah.
While we're getting ready for the questions, and we'll take the questions in a minute. Leave your questions in the comments. Let me just ask you something that I'm always curious about, and that is, do you remember the first thing you ever wrote?
I wrote a book in school with a school friend, and I don't I know it was about, what was it about? It was about a family, but I do recall that we wrote bestseller all over the cover.
That's so great. And it has indeed come to pass. The bestseller is now written all over this cover, and not by you or your
No.
friend in crayon, but by all of your wonderful fans who are just clamoring to read this fantastic, fantastic book. Let's do take some questions. If anyone, I've seen them. Oh, Catherine, hey, love the cover. Look at that. The forest and the four sections ripped apart. Did you have any input into the cover design and title?
Yes, I did. I had, they always show me kind of ideas, and we looked at different colorways, and we played with the background because it's hard to see online, but the background here is a starry sky to mirror the location that the women are stranded in. And I'll show you, I might as well because I've got it here. This is the UK cover.
Oh, someone was asking about that. Let's see
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So,
So
that's
that's packaged very differently, but I quite like it as well with the
so it's
people.
hard. I haven't gotten used to that. If I move closer to the camera, I can't really see any closer. I keep going, leaning closer. But are those the women on the road? Who is that?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the women and the men walking up there. Yeah. So I do get a reasonable amount of input, but this was easy. I think this cover design is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of
Look at
my
that.
favorite that
It's
I've had.
amazing and
Yeah,
scary, and so destroyed. It's damaged is the word I'm looking
yeah,
for. Just
yeah,
like
yeah,
the people in the book are damaged, and that
yeah.
that is that comes out so gorgeously. Pamela is saying, I love both covers, and Gail is saying, thank you for sharing the UK covers. Shannon
Yeah.
says, interesting that UK and US are different. Yes, Pamela.
So different. Yeah.
Who else has a question for Gilly as we are almost out of time? What were the most and least difficult parts of writing this novel? Good question.
Yeah, great question. Well, I think the least difficult part was the kind of setup because I had that from the film. I had this letter and I knew, and I had three women. And so that was all there. The really difficult bit was bringing it all to life and making the plot live up to that because that's such
Mhm.
an amazing setup. I kept thinking, crikey, can I actually do a plot that lives up to that, like does it justice? Because, it's a famous film and it's a wonderful film. And I wanted to not make, I wanted to do the best I could on that. So yeah, the plot was hard.
That's an interesting thought that because you were inspired by a story, that you wanted it to be worthy of that story. Um, and it really worked, Julie. It's
Thank
quite
you.
astonishing. Who else has a question? What authors do you love? Says the fabulous Julie.
So many. The author who first inspired me to want to write thrillers was James Lee Burke.
Oh,
And the reason for that is because he writes like a dream. So he has these gorgeous, gorgeous descriptive passages and just brings New Orleans and Louisiana to life, but also real gritty stories, and really fabulous dialogue. And I just thought he had the whole package for a crime writer. So he really inspired me. And another one, bit more left field, is Gabriel Garcia Marquez as a classic writer. I think he's just absolutely brilliant.
Well, it's interesting because both of those writers write so gorgeously and so elaborately, lusciously,
Yeah.
with emotion and setting. And your writing again is relentless and obsessed and fast paced, but still deeply into psychology.
Yeah, I love that stuff. And for me, the thrillers I most enjoy have that little bit of psychological exploration and plots that are driven by people and not just events. I like when people's actions trigger, again, like dominoes falling, trigger other people's actions, and then off we go.
And there are certainly several gasp-worthy moments in The Long Weekend. I have to say, there were times when I said, "Are you kidding me? How did you do that? Oh my God, I never saw that coming." Who else has one last question? Do you have a favorite character in her books, Sherry, or in real life you pick, Gilly?
One of my favorite characters is the detective I had in my debut because he's called Jim Climo and he solves, or tries to solve, I should say, the mystery of this missing child. And I've just always had a super soft spot for him. I think because it was my first book and first time writing a detective. And yeah, he's all close to my heart. Maybe I'll bring him back.
Where did he come from? Was he inspired by someone?
He was a little bit inspired by my dad, who was always very proud of his professional achievements. He worked very hard, and I wanted to put that into this character. My character doesn't kind of always succeed, but he has that. He wants to be proud of what he's done. So yeah, pick that up from my dad a little bit.
When you wrote that first novel and it worked, I mean, that's sort of a huge leap of faith to say, I'm going to write a novel. Where did that come from, and what did you think when you saw that? What a success that was!
Oh, it was extraordinary. I mean, I never believed that that was going to happen. I set out to write because I had a little bit of time when my youngest child started school and I needed to get a job. I had a little bit of time before I had to, and I thought, I'm going to see if I can write a book. I'd never have quit a job to do it. I'm not that kind of person. So I wrote 1,000 words a day until I had a book, and that was the start of that journey. And a few years later, it was ready to be sold to publishers. It was a dream.
And when you that first moment, my last question, that first moment when you saw it in a bookstore, what did you think?
Well, actually, I felt like it was mine. I had a little bit of I should take that home with me because it's mine. It shouldn't be here.
Oh, that is
Still have that
so
impulse, yeah.
that is so lovely. And look at you now with this fabulous novel, The Long Weekend, which people are saying, thank you both. This is great. Give us loads of psychology. And everyone is applauding you. Gilly Macmillan, congratulations on yet another fantastic book. And thank you for being with us today. Before I let you go, let me just tell the rest of you who are here today, next week, next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET here on Crime Time, we will welcome the fabulous John Lesquois, who I think is one of the reasons I started writing, real icon of a crime fiction novel. And this is like his 2 millionth novel or something like that, starring Dismas Hardy. So if you know John Lesquois, you will, or even if you don't, you'll want to come hear about The Missing Piece, which is quite a fantastic book. But Gilly, thank you for being here today. We will now pick the winner of The Long Weekend on the Wheel of Fun. And here we go. And the winner is the suspense. Sherry Steuben, congratulations. You are such a stalwart fan of Crime Time on a Mighty Place, and I know you will absolutely adore this book. So send me your address and we will get you this book. Gilly Macmillan, thank you. You are such a treasure and a rock star. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's so lovely to be here with you.
Well, I hope we can see each other in person sometime soon. That would happen. That would be great. And all of you, thank you for being here today. We will see you next week at 4 p.m. ET for another edition of Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time.